Can
Okay.
you give us a prognosis of what's likely to happen between Turkey and Russia, or Turkey's position at this time?
Uh, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Maurice, it's good to be again with you at this critical moment in the historical process. To be alive at this time and to be someone who is attempting to understand the reality of the world today, it's a glorious moment. It's the most challenging moment ever in history. And every day that passes by, it becomes an even more challenging moment to be able to penetrate and understand the historical process and the moment in history in which we have arrived. Your question pertains to the relations between Turkey and Russia, and that cannot be addressed without also incorporating into the answer the relations between the Ottoman Empire, which preceded Turkey, and Russia. And I want to look at that subject from a long-term perspective rather than looking at it only momentarily, a snapshot. And what I see is that from the day that the Ottoman Empire was born, to this day, the relationship has always been antagonistic. The relationship has always been one in which Russia has been targeted with unjust wars. And the Ottoman Empire declared that they were all infidels, that you had to wage jihad on them, and the Ottoman Empire waged the jihad continuously. The only time they did not fight was in the winter months, when it was not possible to fight, and they would spend the winter months preparing for spring to come and back again on the battlefield. When I looked at this pattern, I see that when Turkey came into being, Turkey followed in the footsteps of the Ottoman Empire by joining eventually into NATO. There is a story of how Stalin facilitated that entry into NATO for Turkey, which was a little bit undecided on the subject. Well, that's not really important. Important thing is that Turkey is a member of NATO and has comfortably remained in NATO up to the present moment, despite the accusation that the United States was party to the attempted coup. Turkey still remains a member of NATO. I am not convinced, Maurice, that we should be precipitate in our thinking and our analysis to believe that there is some kind of fundamental, radical change that is about to take place that will rewrite the historical process. I think that's a little bit, it's not proper thinking, proper analysis. That suddenly Turkey is going to become an ally of Russia, and that Russia can trust Turkey, and that Turkey will then become an opponent of NATO. No, I don't believe that that is going to happen. No. I believe, on the other hand, that Turkey will remain consistent with what it has functioned as in the historical process, in the present secular regime, plus the one that came before in the Ottoman Empire, namely playing a sinister role on behalf of Western Christianity and European Judaism, a sinister role in constantly targeting the Orthodox Christian world, and in particular Russia. Well then, what do we make of Erdogan's traveling to meet with Putin? The only possible answer I can give to that is that this is a fishing expedition, and this is being conducted on behalf of NATO. despite the public posture. I think it's a fishing expedition, and I think Turkey is attempting to see what it can do prior to the Great War, which is about to take place, what it can do to enter into Russia's embrace to better be able to serve NATO's interests. This is what I call a Trojan horse. And I only hope and I pray, and the Lord God answers my prayer, that the Russian leadership remains very, very careful in their relationship with Erdogan and with Turkey, and not enter into an alliance with Turkey that will eventually be a threat to Russia's security. This is my immediate response to your question, Morris.
You mentioned the Great War that is coming. Could you please elaborate and explain what this Great War is?
I have to step back in history and ask you and ask my viewers to examine the thesis that modern Western civilization was born and has consistently maintained since birth a messianic agenda, a very mysterious messianic agenda that was responsible for eventually the Western armies occupying Jerusalem and the Holy Land, the Jews being brought back to the Holy Land, first of all the European Jews, who are not really Semitic people, and then after that the Semitic Jews being brought back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own, and then the restoration of a state of Israel in the Holy Land, and now that Israel having grown to such an extent that it is a power in the world, a superpower in the world, perhaps even more powerful than the European community, the European Union. None of this is by accident. When we look at this messianic agenda with which modern Western civilization was born, we see that there were stages in the pursuit of that agenda in which war has consistently played a strategic role. We cannot just brush aside this analysis of the strategic importance and the strategic role of war in modern Western civilization's pursuit of that messianic agenda. In the first stage of the pursuit of that agenda, Western armies, they swept the world. They went all over the place. They went to China, they went to India, they went to Africa, they went to South America, Britain, all over the world. And Britain creates a British Empire over which the sun never set. And then you had France all over the world, the French Legion, you had the German armies, you had the Italians in Libya and so on. This was the first stage of that pursuit of that agenda, taking control of the world at the point of a naked, bloody sword. And then there was the other part of the pursuit of the agenda in which they then wage great wars. The First World War and the Second World War were wars that mankind never experienced before. The closest thing that mankind had experienced was the Crimean War of 1852 to 1855. It lasted for 3 years. But the Crimean War was the last of the old wars. And then the new wars came with the First World War and then the Second World War. These were wars which were unique in human history, and they changed the world completely. There was a radical movement in the location of power in the world as a result of the First and Second World War. It was not just financial power, it was not just monetary power, it was not just political and economic power, it was dominance over the whole world. And we saw the passage from Pax Britannica to Pax Americana. Consistent with this analysis, that war has consistently played a significant and a strategic role in modern Western civilization's pursuit of its messianic agenda, we now anticipate war again. And it'll have to be a war as great or even greater than the two previous world wars. The two previous world wars did not use weapons of mass destruction. But now you have weapons of mass destruction on both sides of the fence. And if there's going to be war on Russia and on China, and one has to be blind not to see the signs that this is coming. If there's going to be war on Russia and on China, it will have to be nuclear war, because Russia and China are not going to stoop and bend and prostrate themselves. They will defend themselves with everything that they have. And so, Morris, my historical analysis, based on my understanding of the historical process, is that modern Western civilization's military arm, which is NATO, is now poised to pursue the agenda of war for changing the world one more time. And in the same way as with the First and Second World War, Morris, when this war takes place, the world is going to be changed into something totally new. It's going to be an extraordinary change. A new world is going to come into being after this war, of what remains of the world, okay? And I am suggesting that they need the war in order to complete their messianic agenda, which is to have the state of Israel become a ruling state in the world. Now then, we cannot continue this discussion. We cannot continue this analysis without turning to religion. Is it possible for political analysis, the tools of political analysis, to deliver this kind of explanation of Western civilization's messianic agenda? No, they cannot. When we turn to religion, then we have, from Jewish eschatology, from Christian eschatology, and from Islamic eschatology, then we have someone called the Messiah. And the Messiah is someone who will bring back the Golden Age. The Golden Age was that time when the prophets David or Dawood alayhi salam and the prophet Solomon or Suleiman alayhi salam ruled over the state of Israel. And that Israel was the ruling state in the world. No combination of powers in the world could threaten that Israel. No. The Messiah, when he comes, will bring back that golden age. And the holy state of Israel is going to rule the world one more time. And religious truth will dominate the world. So it's goodbye to the secular world. Okay? The Jewish view is that that Messiah has not as yet come. The Christian and the Muslim view is that the Messiah came and left and is going to come back. Which one of these is correct? Modern Western civilization is pursuing the Jewish role, so that a Messiah will stand up in Jerusalem and declare, if someone will stand up in Jerusalem and declare, I am the Messiah. This is the Messianic agenda. In order for him to convince the Jews that he is indeed the Messiah, Israel has to become the ruling state in the world. I have been saying it for 20 years now, Morris, that we are now located at that moment in the historical process where we are witnessing a passage or a transition from Pax Americana to Pax Judaica. And I would love to see scholarship assessing this viewpoint, that we are about to see a great world war, the greatest war ever. And this war is going to eliminate all forces, all possible powers in the world that can stand in the way for Israel to replace the United States as the next ruling state in the world. That is the purpose for the war. And I am so happy that at this moment in time, neither Russia nor China is showing any signs of being afraid and willing to capitulate. So we are on our way to world war.
There's a war on terrorism, which we're all aware of, and there have been frequent incidents in Europe and America, mass shootings, we're told. And there are arguments, there are false flags, there are hoaxes, but there's Orlando, Dallas, I can't keep up with them all. But the agenda seems to be to take our freedoms away and to mold the public in a way I can't really define, but also to demonize Islam. There's always an Islamic factor. We're told that it's ISIS claims responsibility, or that it's inspired by ISIS, and these events are happening rapidly, every week, maybe every day sometimes.
Yes, and there are events which can be understood, and they can be placed in context. The Judeo-Christian Zionist Alliance, which has hijacked modern Western civilization, and which is pursuing the agenda, the messianic agenda to which I've already referred, recognize two powerful forces in the world that stand as obstacles before them. Not one, but two. The more powerful force, the one which for whom they have more fear, is the world led by Prophet Muhammad, Allah's blessings be upon him. That is the one they fear. And the other world that they fear is the Orthodox Christian world. And the false flag terrorism that is taking place now, at this time the target seems to be only the world of Islam, but there is also a consistent attack on Russia. From all sides, they are attacking Russia. A process of demonization is taking place, for brainwashing mankind against Islam and against Russia. That process of psychological demonization also it functions as a process of intimidation and terrorizing people, so that you become scared and you put your tail between your legs and you shut up and you run for cover, so that they can continue their process of dominating the world and pursuing their messianic agenda at this critical moment when you have the passage from Pax Americana to Pax Judaica. In order for them to facilitate that pursuit of that agenda, they have to not only terrorize and intimidate the masses, but they also have to terrorize and intimidate governments. And so governments become increasingly scared. If you step out of line, look at what we can do to you. Take a look at Venezuela, and you see what is happening. It is not just a bomb that is exploding in a cafe in Italy. It's also the state terrorization of Venezuela. The government of Venezuela is back against the wall, struggling for survival. They have been able to to change governments in Brazil, in Argentina, and in several other countries of South America, to install new governments that are friendly towards them and replace governments which were standing up against them. This process of terrorization and intimidation now makes so many more countries around the world terrified of stepping out of line. The Pakistani government has to ensure that they don't step out of line, otherwise the Pakistani rupee will tumble the way the Venezuelan bolivar tumbled. The Malaysian government has to be very, very careful not to step out of line. Otherwise, guess what's going to happen to the Malaysian ringgit in its competition with the Singaporean dollar? And so I would like to suggest to you, Maris, that we do not look at these acts of terrorism simply as a process of demonization of the Muslim masses. But there is a greater agenda at work in terrorizing and demonizing mankind to such an extent that people become scared and governments become scared to step out of line.
I have interviewed an Iraqi refugee in Turkey, and he has informed me that as the war is being waged on ISIS in Fallujah, Tikrit, etc., what is actually happening is the entire towns are being vacated. Everybody is turned into a refugee. And it feels as if it's a war being waged on the Sunni population. But this is the solution to fighting ISIS, is to actually wage war on the entire populations of these areas, and they're also being decimated. There's virtually nothing left by the time the ISIS has been defeated.
Morris, there is a dimension to this subject that I'd rather remain silent about at this time. If I were to comment on it, it would be counterproductive. I would rather restrict myself rather than to focus on the Sunni world. I'd rather restrict myself to the Muslim world, and leave the Shia-Sunni divide out of the analysis at this time, because, and I don't want to say anything more. There are strange things happening in Iran. That's all I'm going to say, okay? The function of ISIS appears to be, amongst other things, to ensure that that territory on the north of Iraq and north of Syria remains similar to a no man's land, so that when the Great War takes place, it will be more easy for the NATO, when the Great War takes place, to ensure that that territory cannot be used as a passageway for armed forces entering into Turkey to join the war. But the more immediate analysis that I'd like to add to these comments, Maurice, is the possibility of civil war in Turkey. I have been saying this for many years now, that the conquest of Constantinople prophesied by Prophet Muhammad, Allah's blessings be upon him, cannot take place without civil war in Turkey. I think that the Turkish coup, attempted Turkish coup, and the response to it by the Erdogan's government is paving the way with almost finesse, paving the way for civil war in Turkey. It's just a matter of time. When that civil war takes place in Turkey, it will not be a war between Islam versus atheism. No, between pro-Islam and pro-secularists. No, the civil war in Turkey would be one in which on one side will be those who want to maintain NATO, the alliance with NATO, and NATO's control over the Bosphorus, and on the other side, an alliance of all forces which are hostile to NATO and want to get NATO out. The two most powerful forces were going to be in alliance in that effort to remove NATO from the Bosphorus would be the world of Islam and the Orthodox Christian world.
So we have certain focus points of conflict around the world. Russia's being surrounded basically on the west by NATO forces, and then we also have the South China Sea, and France is very much following in the footsteps of the United States, also reinforcing a military presence in Asia. I just wonder what there's also accusations of the Zionists have a great deal of influence on Russia and China. Is this possibly true?
I would much prefer, Morris, that the military experts and the political experts, political scholars, scholars of politics of Russia, such as Alexander Dugin, and of China be the ones to answer that question, because my knowledge of Russia and of China cannot in any way compare to their scholarship. Yeah, and that I should devote more time to the world of Islam, which is my homeland. Yeah, it is a process of intimidation of not only governments in the world of Islam, but also in Orthodox Christianity. See what has happened in Serbia. I visited Serbia. I visited Belgrade, I think, about 2 years ago. I'm an Islamic scholar. The Ottoman Empire ruled over Belgrade for 400 bloody years. The Serbian people hated Islam with tremendous hatred because of this Ottoman oppression. When they got rid of the Ottomans, they destroyed every masjid in Belgrade and left only one standing. Up to this day, there's only one masjid in Belgrade, although there are about 200,000 or 300,000 Muslims in Belgrade. There was so much hatred in the Orthodox Christian world for Islam because of the sabotage that the Ottoman Empire enacted. They pursued this process of sabotaging an end-time friendship and alliance between Muslims and Orthodox Christians. But when I arrived in Belgrade, and because of the internet, because of YouTube, they knew something about my profile. They knew that I denounced the Ottoman Empire for its injustice to them and so on. They knew that I declared that the taking control of Hagia Sophia, the greatest cathedral of Orthodox Christianity in Constantinople, and transforming it into a masjid, I called it something shameful. I called it something disgraceful. I called it manifestly sinful. And I said, I look forward to the day when we'll be able to return that cathedral to Orthodox Christianity and offer an apology for what had happened and have the name of the city restored to Constantinople. This news, when it reached them, they received me with great love. Morris, when I entered the auditorium of the University of Belgrade, the auditorium was packed, overflowing. People were standing in the corridor. And as I entered the auditorium, they're seeing me for the first time in life. There was thunderous applause like I never experienced in life before. I was taken by surprise. And it lasted for a long time. And while I was speaking, I was told there were many who were weeping in that auditorium. This is the love and the affection that they were showing. That same Serbia now is under the control of a government which is entering into NATO by the back door. It's like Pakistan all over again. The people hate NATO. The government stoops down and worships NATO. So it's a process of intimidation and subversion of the whole world, but targeting in particular the Muslim world and the Orthodox Christian world, and of course China. So we have to look at the subject from a global perspective, and I would like to suggest that we allow the military experts of Russia and of China to offer to us their analysis of how NATO is preparing for war with them. But when we come to the world of Islam, Morris, it is in this area that perhaps I can offer comments which would be of some value to the listening and viewing audience. The world of Islam today is imprisoned in a political system in which it's broken up into secular states. The smaller, the better. And then the smaller state is more easily controlled than a big state. And these smaller states are now controlled by governments, which are all of them stooping down and worshipping NATO shamelessly. All of them. Whenever there was a government in the world of Islam that stood up against NATO, they assassinated. In Saudi Arabia, we saw King Faisal, who for one glorious moment in his life stood up against them, and then they assassinated him. We saw the same thing in Pakistan, when Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, for all his weaknesses, and he was a man with many weaknesses, yes, of course, I'm the first to recognize that. But I want my critics to recognize also that Bhutto stood up against them in 1973-74. And when he resisted them and put Pakistan's interests first rather than theirs, they got rid of him and he died. He was killed, assassinated. And then we have the case of Ziaul Haq, who served their interests as a faithful stooge of the Zionists until something happened in his heart and he had a change of heart and he became more patriotic and he put Pakistan first and he put Islam first. And got rid of him. Do you remember, Morris? Yes, the American ambassador on an aeroplane with Ziaul Haq and a bomb in the American ambassador's briefcase. That's how they were able to get rid of Ziaul Haq. You see? And so their policy has always been to control the world of Islam by controlling governments. Now, when the Great War takes place, governments no longer rule. No. Who controls money controls the world. Yes, whoever controls money controls the world. And after the Great War, I believe, Morris, there's not going to be any more paper money. All the currencies in the world are all going to collapse. At this moment, it's like a big balloon. We're just waiting for one pinprick, and everything will collapse. Anyone who studied monetary economics will know that. So what kind of world is going to be when the Great War takes place? How will the world of Islam respond? The answer is, we have in the world of Islam the Quran, and we have this way of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sunnah, in which a gold coin, a gold dinar, and a silver dirham is recognized as money. And this paper money and electronic money are bogus. If the world of Islam, the Muslim masses, can be re-educated to wake up and recognize that this is money, and if they can store enough dinar and dirham, gold coins and silver coins, it is possible that after the Great War, when the electronic monetary system takes over, and banks now will rule the world, not governments, banks, that Muslims who have dinar and dirham, gold and silver coins, will be able to keep themselves aloof from that monetary system, and then be able to have freedom to resist it. That is my first comment, and I hope and I pray that these words may reach to the masses, and that they may start accumulating dinar and dirham, gold coins and silver coins. in enough quantity to be able to keep themselves away from the electronic monetary system which is coming. The second comment I like to make about the world of Islam in a post-nuclear world is that our Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, has prophesied. And every Muslim around the world must know it. We have to tell them. If they don't know it, we have to tell them that this is a prophecy of Prophet Muhammad, Allah's blessings be upon him. There is going to be a great war. He told us about the great war. He said that 99 out of every 100 who fight in that war will be killed, and therefore it cannot be conventional warfare, Morris. Conventional warfare does not kill 99% of combatants. It has to be a war in which weapons of mass destruction are going to be used, like nuclear weapons. So our Prophet has prophesied this great war which is coming, which will be a unique war in human history. And he called it the Malhama. But in Christian eschatology is also there. They call it Armageddon. When this war takes place, what comes after? And how will the Muslim world respond? It is at this time, Morris, that we need every single avenue that we can acquire, every single means we can get to reach out to the Muslim masses, to educate them, to teach them that the Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, has prophesied that after the Great War, the next important event that will take place will be the conquest of Constantinople. And so if you're seeing strange things happening in Turkey now, it is preparatory to a civil war in Turkey, which is going to lead to the conquest of Constantinople. And that will be the end of NATO. NATO will not be able to control the Bosphorus anymore. The only way that NATO cannot control the Bosphorus, that they have controlled for, 600-700 years now, because they had, the Western Christianity had the Ottoman Empire to do it on their behalf, and then NATO had Turkey to do it on their behalf, okay? The only way that this stranglehold over the Bosphorus that they have maintained for 600 or 700 years now can be broken is if the great war that is coming is going to result in a defeat for NATO. That's our conclusion. That Russia will survive the Great War, may not be a power with air power, because maybe aeroplanes won't fly anymore, but certainly a naval power, because the Russian Navy can now pass through the Bosphorus into the Mediterranean. Otherwise, why conquer Constantinople? The message for the Muslim masses around the world is that as soon as the Great War takes place, those who survive the Great War will have to follow the command of the Prophet, Allah's blessing be upon him. Follow his command. Join the army which is going to conquer Constantinople. And so Arabs are going to be moving north, and that's why you now have ISIS there to block them. Notice the territory that ISIS controls. The north of Iraq, the north of Syria. In order to block the passage of Muslims moving towards Turkey to conquer Constantinople. And Muslims are going to be coming from the north as well, from the Russian Federation, from the Balkans, to join that army which is going to conquer Constantinople. No government in the world, Morris, none, will be able to stop the Muslim masses from responding to Prophet Muhammad, Allah's blessing be upon him. These are his words. He said, and Morris, allow me to quote the Arabic. He said, لَتَفْتَحَنَّ الْقُنْسْتَنْتِنِيَّةِ You will most certainly conquer Constantinople. وَلَنِعْمَ الْأَمِيرُ آمِرُهَا وَلَنِعْمَ الْجَيْشُ ذَلِكَ الْجَيْشُ He praised the army, the wonderful army. He praised it. And he praised the commander of that army. which will conquer Constantinople. But there are also grounds to believe that the conquest of Constantinople will be on the basis of an alliance between Muslims and Orthodox Christians, in which Russia will play the most prominent role. And so there is drama coming into the world, Maurice. Drama. The world of Islam is going to wake up like never before as soon as that great war takes place. The world of Islam is going to wake up and shake away all the governments. And the world of Islam, you're going to see the people flowing towards Constantinople from every single direction in order to fulfill the prophecy of Prophet Muhammad, to conquer Constantinople and liberate the city and liberate the Bosphorus from NATO control.
Well, you make one wonder about the status of the Kurds. It would seem NATO's supporting them completely, and Russia's also being very friendly and assisting them.
Again, we are now moving into the Sunni Shia divide in Islam. And I want to rise above that Sunni Shia divide, because that subject, if I were to offer comments, is going to be counterproductive at this time. The Kurds are Sunnis, and they have played a glorious role in history under Salahuddin Ayyubi, Saladin, you remember Saladin, in restoring Muslim control to Jerusalem after the Crusaders had taken Jerusalem. And I believe that the Kurds are destined to return to that glorious role of theirs in Islam, and that the Kurds are also going to be a part of the Muslim alliance with the Orthodox Christians, which will conquer Constantinople. In fact, I believe that the Kurds are going to spearhead that effort. So their hearts are going to be in the right place. They're going to be part of the alliance which will conquer Constantinople. That is my message to the Kurdish people. Yeah.
It seems the Americans are wishing to assist in the conquest of Mosul, or in the eviction of ISIS from Mosul, and the Sadr forces are declaring that the Americans will be targets. I mean, does this mean a broadening of the war in Iraq?
The prophecy of the Prophet, Allah, again, Maurice, I am not a Russian, I'm not an American, I'm not Chinese. My views should always be based on Islamic viewpoint. The Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, has located the great war that is coming to start in the north of Syria. The north of Syria, north of Iraq territory, where ISIS is at this time. And so we can expect that something is going to happen. It could be the effort underway now to conquer Aleppo and restore Aleppo to Syrian control. Something is going to happen in that part of the world, which is going to trigger what happened in the summer of 1914. Was it the assassination of the Grand Duke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo, you remember? That's right. And that event triggered the First World War. And the First World War was not finished. It was just continued into the Second World War. So the two world wars had their commencement in an event that took place in Sarajevo. This World War, again, while it will be fought in Russia and in China and etc., will commence with an event that will take place somewhere in that region of northern Syria, northern Iraq. It could be Aleppo, and that will be the trigger. And I have suggested, and of course I can be wrong, and I hope I am wrong, I have suggested that the trigger is going to be pulled sometime before the US election, the coming election. Because those who, the Judeo-Christian Zionist alliance, are not comfortable with an American president who wants to maintain friendly relations with Russia. And that's Donald Trump. Yeah. Donald Trump said, I don't see any reason why we should be having a hostile relationship with Russia. No. So they can't take the chance. No. They can't take the chance of Donald Trump winning the next election. They succeeded with George Bush. They succeeded. They had him placed as president when, in fact, he lost the election. But they may want to take the chance again this time. So it is possible that the trigger will be pulled before the American election in November, and it is likely that the trigger will be pulled for the Khamenei side, that the trigger will be pulled somewhere in the north of Syria, north of Iraq, that area where Aleppo is located, and Mosul is located, yeah.